Welcome back to the Charismatic Voice, and I hope that all of you will welcome with me Layne Stein from VoicePlay. Say hello.
Hello, fans of Elizabeth.
So we just finished premiering another video on this channel, which was first-time reaction and analysis of the Moana Medley that VoicePlay did with Rachel Potter. It was incredible. And Layne was awesome enough to offer a deep dive session into the actual production project of the Moana Medley. So we're going to be taking a look at that. Thank you so much again, Layne, for offering this. This is just really awesome for me and for the fans.
This is exciting. I'm glad I can share.
All right, so here we are in Pro Tools. And this is the DAW that Layne uses. Layne, can you talk to me a little bit about what the production process looks like? Do you guys record into Pro Tools? Do you shift things there later? Do you mix and master in Pro Tools? What does that look like for you?
That's a good question. We all actually have different setups at home. So I have Pro Tools, but a few of the other guys have Logic. And I think one other person has Pro Tools. So it's just like a mishmash of all the different DAWs. And then basically once it's all done, whoever's editing it, and for this one, this was mine. So I'll edit it into Pro Tools, and then the process is after I'm done editing, then I'll send it off to our mix engineer, who is super good.
That's awesome. Do you guys usually record in different places, or do you often record together?
We often record at our own houses, unless we're doing a live video. And you know, it's weird. A lot of people say you get better results if you're kind of all in the same room, kind of vibing off each other. And we definitely have done that before in the past. But I think we've kind of gotten to a point where we all know what we're thinking. We've been doing this for so long, and you can already kind of hear the critique from the other guys while you're doing it. You know what I mean? So it all inevitably there end up being notes that go back and forth too. So you know, if I'm doing this session, then if I get a part from Ellie or from Jeff, I'll write them up an email with timestamps and kind of, this is what I need you to do differently, or completely scrap your solo. It's crap. I don't know.
Your Hey Hey solo in this was just ridiculous and amazing. But okay, we'll get to that, I'm sure.
I'm so glad you liked it. So did my daughter.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. I think I rolled back in my chair just of laughter at that moment. It was really, really great.
Of like, oh God, this is laughable.
It was gleeful. Yeah, it was fun. So that's interesting too. So then if you have everybody in different booths, I'm guessing you just all have like a certain distance that you're all singing from the microphone, or like certain expectations there. Do you guys use similar microphones, or do you worry about any of that sort of continuity?
Absolutely. A few of us use the same microphone. We didn't always, and it's always more of a challenge if you're using like a smorgasbord of different mics. And it really depends, because some people's voices sound better on different mics. So you got that you have to consider that as well. But all in all, I think we use either Shure KSM32, which is what this is, or Neumann 103 or something like that. I don't really remember, but I think that's what we use between the three of us.
That's awesome.
Or five of us. Yeah. Yeah. And then for something like this, when Rachel's involved, she'll usually come in a night or two before and record in person.
Ah, got it.
Because she doesn't live here.
Yeah, she lives in Nashville, right?
She lives in Nashville, and the rest of us live in Orlando.
Got it. So I was also curious, from a lot of people, COVID has really changed how they work, but it sounds like because you're recording at home for the most part, it hasn't actually affected your process as a group that much.
Well, to an extent, like it's affected our live shows tremendously. You already know that. But as far as recording, getting together is still a little bit of a struggle because COVID. But as far as the recording process and getting music made, it's about the same.
Okay. I'm glad that is still working at the least.
Definitely.
Okay, so I'm looking over this project here. Do you want to kind of guide me through what this skeleton layout, how you've laid it out here in Pro Tools?
Sure. Yeah. So basically on this one, all of us did a single track all the way through. And I think there might be a couple of doubled moments, which is kind of where you go in and sing along with yourself, and that has a tendency to kind of thicken up the sound. I don't think we did that, or if we did it, it was like not a lot on this one. Very singular track, and that was kind of like, that's kind of what I had in mind for this one, is that I wanted it to feel like it was very live. Obviously it wasn't, but I just wanted that, I don't know, not a lot of tricks happening, just us.
Yeah.
Because the movie really felt just pure and true. So I wanted to kind of emphasize that in the arrangement.
So this was your arrangement too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. It was really, really, really good. I loved your really fast transitions between songs. That was super impressive, and I liked the. Did you send out a tempo guide track to people too when they recorded?
Okay, that's a great question. Yes, but even more than that, basically what happens is whoever's arranging records all of the parts first.
Can we hear your bass?
You know what's funny is with the bass, a lot of times I'll just use an instrument, which is just kind of MIDI plucking out a sound like a bass guitar or something like that. And if there's a part that I'm very specific with, I'll sing down his part. And sometimes I'll even like pitch shift it so it sounds a little bit like beefier. So it gives him something to like compete against, kind of. So he's like, oh, I got to outdo Layne.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, after that, after everyone kind of approves the arrangement and like, oh, I really like this section, I don't like this section, can you change this, that, blah. Then the parts get sent out, and either I'll send out the entire session and it's labeled with everyone's part and what they're supposed to do, or we'll send out part dominance, which is where you hear like an MP3 where your part would be on the left side and when you're listening to headphones, and everyone else would be on the right side. You can obviously flip-flop it however you want. That's cool. And then if you want to practice along and really get it before you record it, you would only listen to one ear at a time, and learn with your practice part, and then you would take it off to see if you got it or not. That's
amazing. I absolutely will use that sometime. That's such an amazing idea. Oh, really cool.
Yeah, it's fun. We've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah, I think like, oh, I record with one ear on anyhow, and then if that gets true, like I'll shift it around kind of depending on where things have been panned. I've just never thought about doing guide tracks with that sort of panning. That's great. That's really great. So many things already. So
am I being too long-winded? Am I talking too much?
No.
Okay.
No, I love it, and I think subscribers will also love that. This community really loves the in-depth information, so you're great.
Okay, cool.
Okay, let's see. So let's go back to, you've got Rachel on top, it looks like, and then you have Earl underneath. Oh, how have you divided this? This is fascinating. I'm looking at the groupings on the sides.
Oh yeah, I think you're here. I don't know why this is kind of like this. You're probably looking at Rachel subdivided into several sections right here, and that's sloppy editing first. And second of all, I think you're seeing the track being treated differently for when she's singing backup. Yeah. Versus when she's singing a trio versus when she's singing solo.
Oh my goodness. Okay, that was one of the things when I was listening. When there were the trio harmonies, they were tight, they were great, and they were just so clean. So that, and then I listened, and you can definitely tell backup versus lead. I hadn't realized you actually treated the trio differently as well.
For sure, yeah. And basically everything gets recorded kind of just all the way through first. So it's not like, oh, I need to record this on a separate track. It gets broken down afterwards, so that you can kind of treat it that way.
Wow. That's really awesome. So how much do people self-balance in the recording for those like lead versus backup or trio moments?
Okay, that's a really good question, because I used to think that it could all be kind of fixed later in post. You know what I mean? Fix it in post. It's not true. You need people to sing it as close as possible to how you want it to sound. And the more authentic and organic it is, the more that comes through in the final recording. Obviously, you can always add volume fades to certain things where higher in my register is going to be louder and lower is going to be super soft. You can obviously balance those things out. But as far as intensities, you really want to match those as much as you can while you're recording.
Yeah. When would you think about mic distances too? Would you be closer on certain parts, or does that
absolutely
not play?
Okay. That's not a huge part. You obviously want to have a pop filter, and you want to be a few inches away from the microphone. But also, if you're going to be screaming your head off, you want to be a little bit further away from the microphone so it doesn't explode. And when you're recording something super intimate and it's so soft in your voice, and you just want to everyone to hear every single detail that's going on in your voice, you just get super close to it.
Yep. Yep. Okay. That's perfect. That was already awesome info. Okay, talk to me a little bit more about this structure of. I see. How many tracks do you have over here on the left?
Okay, a lot.
A lot. It looks like so you separated each singer out into definitely lead, backing, and trio harmony. Do you separate singers out beyond that? Like, I was really curious, especially if you would would you separate Eli's voice differently when he's singing high versus low?
Perhaps. Maybe not a lot of that in this one. That's something more to do. Sometimes that's more in the mix side of things, and that can be handled with something that's called multi-band compression, which kind of are you familiar?
Yeah, I think I use. Oh no, that's the EQ I use. But yes, yes, multi-band compression. Yes.
So multi-band compression is where the Okay, let's talk about compression really quick. Promise. So compression is kind of where if you sing something really loud, it kind of clamps it down. And if you sing something very soft, it doesn't do anything. So basically, it brings up the perceived volume of the track by kind of squishing it all down into one contained thing. Now, multi-band compression takes that and it splits up the frequencies into, let's just say, 4 bands, like the really low stuff, the medium low, the high, and the super high stuff. And that has a tendency to take care of if I'm singing something really high versus I'm singing something super low, it kind of evens it out.
Yeah.
So it's a tool that's used kind of in the mixing part of it that helps balance it all together. And it's very important, I would say, in almost any style of music that you record, mix, arrange, write, whatever part you're doing.
So I might be getting ahead a little bit here, but do you put any sort of multi-band compression on people, or on tracks, I should say, before you would send it off to your mixer?
Our mixer is Ed Boyer.
Ed.
And we love him.
You're amazing, Ed.
Thank you, Ed. And he's such a nice guy. And the other thing about Ed is that just gets it. Like he understands a cappella. He's been doing it for so long, and he's been doing it for I think he does it for the pentatonics, he did it for the sing-off, he does it for probably 100 other groups.
Wow.
So he
Oh,
lives
man.
and breathes this stuff, and he just knows what to do. He's technically savvy, and he's also musically savvy, and he's also a cappella savvy. He's got like all those things.
He must be so fast.
He's like such a nerd. Like he just kidding. No.
Well, there's a good thing.
It's great because I actually used to do all of our mixing. And it got to a point where I really needed some help, and I needed somebody else with an ear that understood it. And that's who Ed is. So now I've taken the role of kind of compiling everything and getting it to sound as best that I can. So yes, the answer is, of course, I try to get it to sound exactly how I want it to sound. And then I say, take it further.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because you probably know what you want more than anybody as an artist. So being able to communicate that as clearly as possible is very important.
Well said.
Communication.
Right. Life lesson right there. That's great. Okay, so let's see.
Wait, I have a question. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, you can ask me a question.
Did you love Moana, the movie?
I did. There were a couple of key moments that I really, really loved in that movie. One of them was a moment when we discovered that the Hey and not the pig was going to be the lead animal sidekick. That choice was amazing.
Yes.
Loved Maui, especially. I have a friend that actually sang that entire song before I'd seen the movie to me in a car in traffic in LA. And that's always stuck with me. He was amazing. Jason. Now he's famous. And then the end, when there was that understanding, the empathy was the thing that really helped overcome conflict. I thought that was such an amazing moral and just a lesson to everyone to have. So I loved that moment. What about you?
That's so great. Oh my gosh. You know what's funny about it is that my daughter Doris had just turned 1, and she was obsessed with watching this whole movie. We're like, what 1-year-old watches an entire movie all the way through? So she wanted to watch this movie every night. And I'm a huge fan of Lin-Manuel, so I was already like, okay, sign me up. So every night we'd watch this, and I'm just like, this is a masterpiece. Every night I was like, oh, this is so good. And finally I was like, you know what, guys, I brought it to the group. I was like, let's do a Moana medley. And they were like, this never happens. There's always some kind of argument, or like, I want to do this, but I want to do that. And I want, like, everyone has their own opinion, and that's wonderful. But everyone was like, okay. And I was like, really? And they're all like, yeah, let's do it. So that's when I, started compiling it all together, and that was the beginning.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's incredible writing and just such clever moments, and just, it has so much heart and soul. You can just, anyway, enough.
No. Okay. So we have to thank your daughter then. Doris.
Absolutely.
Her name, right?
Doris.
Okay. Doris, who is now 4?
She's 4.
Okay. Aw, thank you, Doris. All right. Let's dive back into this session. Now, there's tons of tracks here. So this is really interesting to me to see how differently you treat different parts of each vocal. And when you were first scrolling through, I noticed it looks like you treat different parts of your beatboxing very differently. Do you have a kick throat? You have your tom? Like, whoa, this is...
Yes.
Wow.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
But look at all the drum tracks. I'm just going to expand it down. Look at all these beautiful drum tracks. The drums get the most tracks. And that's because That's because I'm the drummer.
That's amazing. Well, but you're covering a ton of different frequencies, and the sounds have to be super tight in a way that's a little bit different. And they also have to be really consistent too, right?
Absolutely. And I'll just go through it real quick.
Okay. Yeah.
So basically when I record the drums, I think for this one in particular, I did a one take all the way through. So that means I'll record all the way through, and it won't be necessarily all at once. I'll punch little sections, and I get the outline. Like, this is what I want it to sound like. These are the things that I want to do in these sections. And then after that, there might be a few little embellishments where you'll hear a few like overlapping sounds. But I don't do that the entirety because once again, for this arrangement, I wanted it to feel like it was all like you get to make one sound at a time and that's it. Which is a nice little kind of like box to give yourself. It's always good to give yourself guidelines. Now, the thing that kind of enhances the sound is breaking each sound up and treating them differently. But what's so important is that you don't want to chop it all. Like when you're looking down here, you're seeing a lot of the sounds kind of all chopped up. What you don't want to do is only do chopped up sounds. That's in addition to. It's adding to the organic sound. So the organic sound is getting all the love, and all of the chopped up bits are just an added bonus.
Got it. So that's like that thickening of the sound that you were talking about, sort of when you would double yourself?
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's where you can kind of separate out the kick or the snare or the hi-hat and give them their own EQ curve or their own compression. And honestly, you can take it as far as you would like or as little as you would like.
But since you're the percussion, you get really specific with it. So
that's right, I do. But I like I said, it's so important to keep it organic no matter how far you take it.
Yeah, that's true. It needs to be human.
Yeah. It needs to sound like me, and it needs to be human, but it needs to be the best possible version of that.
Yeah, makes sense. So how many different sounds did you come up with for this?
What kind of, oh my gosh.
I might have said that I thought I heard at least 50 sounds at one point, but I have no idea. I wasn't actually.
I have no idea. I don't count, but I'm sure it's probably more than that.
And you did this one where you flicked you did it better on the actual video. Yeah, that was cool. Oh,
yeah, it sounds like a little water drop.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
It's a little trick I learned in middle school, like on a bus or something like that. Some other kid on the bus was like doing it, and I was like, how do you do that?
Okay, all of the fans will write in the comments below that I literally said that sounded like a thing that I tried on the bus in middle school.
Oh my God.
That's amazing.
You said that in your video?
I literally said that. Yes.
No freaking way.
Really?
How weird.
Yeah, okay. Apparently.
Were you the kid that I learned it from?
I'm sure it was like my cousin or something, right? Everybody's a cousin.
Yeah.
But that's amazing. Maybe we've discovered that it's actually like some part of our culture that you have to learn this on a bus in middle school.
I think you might be right. You're onto something.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. So that sound was fantastic. There was a really interesting part where I didn't see your mouth moving, but you were doing like a law or like a tongue flick sort of, and some whoosh 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 in the back. Did you end up adding some extra layers? That was towards the end. I specifically wanted to ask you about it.
Happy to pull it up. What song?
Ooh, it was a transition. As you were maybe transition into the final part where you kind of switched very quickly.
Let's see. Nope. Was it out of that section, maybe?
That might have
I think
been
that's what you're.
Yep,
Yep.
that's it.
Okay. This is definitely one of those parts where I added some stuff.
Bubbles. You call it bubbles?
Well, I will play it for you because.
Okay. That's fun.
So that was me just doing like, and I just kind of layered it. I think I was also layered with the, and I was like, what can I add right here? Because it's so, the whole thing is islandy and beachy. And I was like, what would be that? And I was like, oh, of course, bubbles, because we're kind of approaching the end of the song. It's a lift. How do we do that? And I think the other sound that you were hearing is probably this.
Yeah. So you got.
And that felt more like a wave to me. So I was bubbles and waves, water. It's what the whole entire movie is about.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Got it. So when we say way more than 50 sounds, it's exactly true. That was like two different waves together. Yeah. Interesting. Really, really cool. Are there other sounds like that you just came up with because you were inspired by water or other things in the movie?
I think all throughout it was inspired by sounds from this movie, sounds probably from The Little Mermaid, because I was like, oh, what other Disney movies can I kind of pull some ideas from? And that's the other one that's just very water based. It's underwater, it's above water, it's on the beach. So what kind of sounds did they use on that one? And I kind of pulled from that.
That's cool. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Thinking about how many different ideas that would be bringing together and how you actually have worked them into the song. That's really amazing.
This is a funny little piece. I always like to talk about this little moment. And I don't think a lot of people would catch this, but they might feel it and not even know where it's from. Hold on, I'm going to play it for you. This little part right here. What is that from?
Is that from The Little Mermaid?
Yeah. It's from Kiss the Girl.
Okay. I was like, that, you mentioned Little Mermaid, I was like, it sounds like.
Yeah, the bass line is kind of the same rhythm, and that little ooh is directly from Kiss the Girl. And I was like, oh, what's like a romantic feeling other Disney song that I could, borrow some ideas from, which is always where my head's at. What else can I use as a guide for this? And I was like, oh, for sure, Kiss the Girl.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What a fun little reference right there. And I hear that wave going in the background actually more clear.
That's right.
Too. That's cool. Different at a different waveform.
Oh, see, I called them ocean waves. See? I actually labeled that one correctly.
Hand and lipsons. Is that
what does that say? Hands and lip sounds. I don't know what that is. I'm a little scared, but let's check it out. So that was a loop that I came up with for this rap section, because I was like, well, we need to keep the beat. And I don't really know if anyone else really wants to beatbox right here. We kind of need like a release from it anyway, because we've just been hearing it for 2 minutes straight. So that's when I was like, oh, let's do hands and claps and bodies, hands hitting bodies and stuff like that. So that's what that loop was.
Cool. Very cool. Tell me about the rap. How did you, I said, I'm not going to tell you what I said yet. Was there any character that you thought of when you were rapping that like inspired that sort of tone of voice?
Well, for sure, The Rock.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, I'm, not as legit as The Rock. And I knew that my version was probably going to be a little sillier. But as far as having an idea of, there wasn't much else, I think, to the rap.
You sounded like a blend of The Rock and Hiccup to me from How to Train Your Dragon.
Oh, I haven't even seen that.
Oh, it's so good. I love that film so much. One of my favorite animated films. But he has such a distinguishable voice. It's a very unique sound. It's youthful and it's fun and silly. Exactly like what you said. That silliness to it. I picked up on that and I thought it was so funny. So funny.
Yeah, honestly, I was the reason I ended up doing the rap is because I was going, well, what part should when we do medleys, we try to go, well, this is you and this part's you, so everyone has just at least a little piece. So I was like, what would I do? And I was like, I guess I'll be the chicken. And I was like, I guess I'll do the rap too. So
yeah, there you go. Right. And you guys handed off the coconut a bunch in the video. And I admit I tend to get very involved in the sounds of the video and sometimes miss visual things. And I didn't notice a coconut until it had been handed to you at this point. Was it being handed all along to the person who was soloing or lead?
I think we had that coconut for the intro part, but there was coconutography happening. Where the first couple times that we lip sync through the song, we try to figure out what are we going to do? How are we going to interact with each other? How are we going to use these props? And a lot of times, which is awesome, and especially with Earl, there's a lot of ad-libbing happening, and that's the best part about it. And I'm sure at one point in time, I know Ellie was like trying to juggle. We had a few of them, and he eventually threw it to me, and I was like, well, what do I do with this? And I think that was kind of like it ended up being like the passing of the torch, I think, like you were saying. But it was all very, what do we do with this thing?
Got it. So, and by the way, you said Ellie instead of Eli. Is that the way I should say his name?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. That's important to me. Okay, Ellie. I actually sometimes go by Ellie, but Elly usually. So that's extra funny. Do you want to continue to dive in any particular direction, or do you want me to go off a few more questions that I have over here?
Open. You want me to dive?
Do you feel that? Yeah, you got some nice wave sounds there. I'm curious where you would go with a dive. I feel like you might be able to continue to guide us through this in a super interesting way. So if you feel like you got a direction and you'd like to go in it, then go for it.
The only other thing I think that I can touch on is maybe on the how the songs connect to each other and how we pick a length for the whole thing.
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So these medleys are difficult because each song is so good. It's like, well, how do you pick one song from Moana to embody that movie? It's tough. So that's why we were like, well, let's do a medley. And how do you cut it down into like the best parts of each song? Because each song has so many best parts. So, when I first start kind of compiling the arrangement, we start with all the songs in the session. And let me see if I have it in here. No, it's not in here. We start with the original songs in these. And as you can see on the top, they're like all tempo mapped to the songs.
Nice.
So I'll use the tempo of the actual original and put each one in their little section. So this one is linear with kind of how the movie happens.
Yeah.
So that's why we started out with Where You Are and How Far I'll Go and to You're Welcome. And then basically after you get everything in there, that's when you start chopping each song individually into what embodies what's going to make the soloist sound the best, what embodies the music the best, what's going to get us down to the time that we need to get to, what's the best key for this song, how are we going to transition into the next song. So many questions to ask for each one and to think about all at the same time.
And so what is the time theme?
I think we were like, let's keep it right around 5 minutes, and I think that's what we stuck to.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of want to give everyone about an equal amount of time. So I think that's kind of how they got chopped up. And obviously Rachel was kind of the feature on this one. So I think we tried to give her some extra love on this one so that she had a few more standout moments, just because, during our videos, you're going to see us a lot because it's just the 5 of us. So when we add Rachel in, it's like, well, let's give her some extra love and some extra screen time because it's not all that often that we actually get to see her. And she's so good.
She's really good.
She's super good. And as good as she is in the studio, she's better live.
Really?
And all those little tricks and riffs and high notes and sweet things that she does, those are real. Those aren't studio tricks.
I was going to ask, when you were arranging this, at the end of How Far I'll Go, there's a moment that a singer would normally just hold out straight, and she decided to actually take that riff up. Was that her decision, or was that something you suggested?
That is a great question. That is a really good question, because now we're adding in a new person into the mix, and that is Hannah Giuliano, who takes these arrangements, not all of them, but sometimes when we have a girl, we need a girl to think like a girl. And it's, obviously I can only do so much. But Hannah has such a she's a super creative person, and she'll go through and basically sing all of Rachel's parts the way she thinks they should be sung. And she adds in a lot of those nuanced moments where it's a riff, or maybe she takes the rhythm in a slightly different manner, or sings something extra sweet where I wouldn't have thought to. So yeah, it's just another layer to the arrangement to get a female voice on a female part.
That's awesome. Wow. That actually does lead me to one of the questions that I have, which is how long from saying, yes, we're going to do this until it's done, meaning that the track is done, not necessarily that the music video is done. I'm curious how long that process takes. And I also, if you wanted to break that down a little bit more into how long each of those sort of sub processes take as well, I'd be super interested in that too.
Yeah. So as far as each section, let me just kind of say how kind of the whole process can take anywhere from 2 weeks to a month, I think, just for the music. And that can be from the start of the arrangement until the end of the final mix. So here's how it gets broken down. The arrangement can take a few days to a week. The next part is getting everyone to approve it and then singing their parts, and getting through the note section of that so that everyone kind of goes back and forth once, twice, sometimes 3 times. And that can take another week. The next part of the process is kind of editing all together, because you need to make it sound like it all happened in the same room. So that's where some tuning and timing goes into play. And I don't know if you've played with Melodyne or Melodyne, sometimes Auto-Tune, or in your DAW, you can kind of shift notes around or timing around. And a lot of that does need to happen just to get all of the consonants and all the vowels and the changes to happen seamlessly.
For those Melodyne nerds out there, is there a specific version of Melodyne that you like? Because I know there's a little...
There is.
Yes.
Version 3.
Okay, good. That's just for all those people that have opinions on that. Okay.
Yeah, I can't move on beyond. I can't move on to version 4. I just can't. It's impossible. It's not the same.
Thank you.
So yeah, after that process, that gets approved again, and then after that, it goes to our mix engineer. And I think I totally forgot, like, where Hannah fits into that is where she would fit into the end of the arrangement. So after everything's laid out, after I've already tried my hardest to sing Rachel's part in my falsetto, then and it's so awful, and you're wondering if this is going to sound good or not because it doesn't sound good. I'm like, trust me, it's going to sound good once there's a check on this. So yep, Hannah gets it. So now we're back to the mix process down the road. The mix happens. That usually goes through 3 or 4 rounds of notes. That usually takes a couple of days. And then we're now starting the video process. And that is its own thing. And we do that as well. So the person that's, doing the clothes, like figuring out what we're going to wear, to what the set design is going to be, to the location rental is all us.
That's amazing.
So yeah, that's why it takes so long to put out a video, because we do it all ourselves. And obviously we don't operate the camera every time, but we sometimes operate the camera. So we're doing a lot of it. And I think that's just because that's how we know how to do it.
I mean, that's just so incredible. There's so few people that can do all of those things you guys are taking care of all of them is mind blowing.
We just love it though. And the guys are so good at it. And when everyone's firing on all cylinders, you can make some really great art. We love it. That's why we can't stop doing it.
Good. Please don't. Please don't. Yeah, it's so good. Okay. And so once you do the video, I think you mentioned at one point that you're one of the people that does a lot of video editing as well, right?
Yeah, actually 3 of us video edit now, which is awesome. But yeah, 3 Ellie, me, and Jeff can all edit a video, which is so beautiful. So it's like, who wants to take this one? You? Great. All right. On the next one, who wants to take this one? And a lot of times we'll take our own video just because if you're going to arrange it, you kind of already see a vision for how you want it to look and who you want to showcase at what moment. So that's kind of just like part of the creative process, I guess.
Yeah, that's cool. So then were you the person that was sort of heading off this Moana video as well then?
Yes. It's fun though. Like I was like, oh, I want it to look like a Gap commercial. So we all like shopped at the Gap and it was easy. It was all online shopping, but that's what we do.
Well, and I was very amused by the waves that came up at one point.
Yes. We had somebody paint the background and that was hey, can we get some waves for the foreground? And they're like, yeah, of course. So yeah, the scenic company for that one was awesome. The background was so beautiful.
It was good. That's amazing. This is so fun to learn about. Oh, okay. Did you want to? You were on. I think you finished the train of thought you were on, but was there another one that you had that you wanted to follow?
I mean, unless you had like specific, I'd love to hear these harmonies alone, or I don't know.
I'd love to hear the trio alone.
Okay. Any particular song?
I loved them particularly behind Your Welcome at one point. And actually with Your Welcome, they accompanied the lead at one point. So it was Earl, Rachel, and Ellie. They sounded so good.
Okay. So you want to hear it without drums and without bass, right?
Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Breathe it in. Breathe. I know it's a lot. The hair, the bar. When you stare ahead at the guy, what can I say except you're welcome? For the tide, the sun, the sky. Hey, hey, it's okay, it's okay. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. Take it away.
Wow. It's so nice. And I'm sure you use Melodyne to like help sync it up a little bit, but I love the blend too of Rachel and Ellie there. It's great.
Mm-hmm. And Earl just has that laser voice, so.
That is exactly how I describe him. Yes.
Hey, a laser beam.
Yep. Laser. Yes, exactly. You hear that a lot in This Is Halloween. That was where I was like, wow, it's a super laser. That's awesome. I'm really curious. Do you have set EQ or even like a set chain, a processing chain that you would normally use for different members of the group? Like, is there like sort of a preset that you would even load in if you're saying like, okay, we know that Jeff's bass is going to be very rumbly. So do you have something that you go to as a starting point?
Definitely, yeah. I don't know if I have it on this version of this session. Let me see real quick. This is so funny. I haven't used this plugin in so long, but I think this is the EQ that I started off with Jeff, and you can just see like it's a big old bump right at 90, and then kind of his high end.
Oh, that's so interesting. Usually with EQ, I see a lot more subtraction rather than addition.
Absolutely, yeah. I think if you're trying to get rid of sounds that you don't like, that's where the subtraction goes into play. But if you're trying to go, now I've gotten rid of the bad, I want to add in the good, that's when you start adding, which is why you'll see this. And a lot of times Ed won't necessarily keep what I have with the mix engineer. He might take a look at it and go, okay, I'm going to do my own thing.
And you would just send him the whole project. You wouldn't send individual tracks. You'd send him the project with the plugins
absolutely.
and everything.
Everything. Okay. Yep. And I know which plugins that he has that I have, so I try to use those so that he's not opening up the session and missing a bunch of plugins, and now it sounds completely different.
Yeah. Yep. And so he works off of Pro Tools then as well.
Yes.
Cool. Very, very, very cool.
The other thing that I do when I get this, after I've kind of tuned and timed it, is that I'll sit there and without any plugins on anything, try to kind of balance it out and make sure that everything sounds as good as possible before any plugins happen.
That's a great tip for anybody out there that's doing production.
I think it's awesome. It's time consuming and it's worth it in the end because you get a very organic sound of how your arrangement sounds in the end. Dynamics and swells and I don't know, some words you want to pop out more and like, oh, this part isn't loud enough. Well, you don't always need compression and EQ. Sometimes you just need a little bit of volume.
So that also kind of brings me to another idea. Do you use imaging, like stereo imaging, to help really draw our attention towards maybe a center lead versus side backing tracks or that kind of thing?
Absolutely. Yeah. Typically what you'll hear in the center of any of our mixes, and probably a lot of other mixes that you're listening to, are kick, snare, bass, lead line. And then everything else might be anywhere else on the spectrum. But those are kind of like the big ones that are typically like dead center. And that's to really focus your attention on what's happening.
This makes me giggle because I get so excited when I learn new things. And I've worked with producing vocals plenty of times, but not vocal percussion. And I've just been starting to learn about that. So it's so fascinating to me that you have kick and snare, and you said hi-hat too, right?
No, tippet will sometimes, but most of the times a hi-hat is maybe split more on the sides.
I would never have thought that some of the vocal percussion would be in the center. That's fascinating.
Absolutely. Yes.
Very cool. And where did you image the trio in this?
It depends on where they're sitting or where you see them in the shot, or if they have the solo. So if they have the solo, straight to the middle. Mm-hmm. If you have a harmony and you don't have the solo, it's whatever side you're sitting on.
Okay, cool.
So it kind of makes sense, and you can pick people apart, and you're like, oh, that Earl's sitting over there, so I'm hearing Earl. Mm-hmm. And Ellie's over here, so that's where Ellie, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of where you want to hear that stuff.
That makes sense. And that makes sense too then, because you always are releasing a video then with tracks that you're doing. So that would help with choosing where that imaging is going to go.
Absolutely.
Cool. Let's see. Other questions that I have here. I was really curious. I couldn't tell from the video, but I was told that Ellie switches to bass sometimes when Jeff is singing lead. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. That's so impressive. When I was listening for that today, when I heard Jeff singing the Shiny lead, and I heard bass in there, I thought, that must be that moment. And I had no idea that he had such a full sound down low as well. It was cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times if Jeff has a solo, there isn't always a bass line, or sometimes he'll sing his bass line and his lead, or sometimes one of the other guys will do it. And what's funny is Ellie and Jay both have very low voices.
Oh,
yes.
Really?
And Jay is he's a super good bass. He's a super bass, I think. Yeah. Super bass.
Super bass. Can we actually hear Ellie at that moment when Jeff is singing Shiny?
Let's see. Yeah.
Just to give a little appreciation to that. Oh, is that actually Jeff? Maybe it is Jeff. Maybe I'm wrong.
It is Jeff. Yep. And I think Ellie might have just lip synced it for that moment.
I don't know. It was hard to tell what Ellie was. The camera wasn't on him as much, and I thought though that he was singing it, but I guess I was wrong there.
That's funny. It's funny because now I'm thinking back to the shoot, and I'm going, oh, I wonder if Ellie decided if he was going to take over the bass line, or if he was going to sing the backgrounds. And a lot of times that's something that we'll figure out day of, if there's an overlap where either you have sung a background part where you don't usually sing background parts, or you're like a bass line like this, where either Ellie has sung it or Jeff has sung it, or whoever is not the bass at that moment sings it. So a lot of times that's something we're like, hey, I know I sang bass on that, but do you want to maybe just lip sync to it today? And it was like, sure, yeah, of course. That'll make sense. Yeah.
That's fun. Yeah. Well, it's really cool to know that is a thing that regularly happens within the group.
Definitely.
Let's see, anything else here? I think I mostly have it. I'm sure that you have 10 billion different EQs and that you put on all of the vocal percussion. We talked some about that.
Do you want to hear some of it alone?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be really interested in that. And I'd be really interested in hearing your thoughts on how you produce. If there's any like groupings that you do of different vocal percussion instruments together.
I think that was your welcome. Hold on, let's go back a little bit.
Moana, make way, make way. Moana, it's time you knew. The village of Motonui is all you need.
I love the bends that you do in there sometimes. They're so cool.
I love that drum line.
Can you do a little bit of it for us right now?
Moana. Yeah. I love that one. It's so like I never get to do anything like fun and silly to start off with. It's usually like a build for each song, but somehow for this song I got the intro because it just made sense and it stuck and I don't know, I feel like it's a way to like kind of grab people in, like because the drums are such a, I don't even know how to describe it, but they're so
infectious.
Maybe, yeah. That's a good word.
I noticed that too in the video. I
was going to say gimmicky. That was my word.
No, mine's better. No, it was a real surprise when we started into it. I was like, whoa, it hits you right away. Because usually you have much, like you're talking about like a draw-in with sort of a softer approach so that there's like more of a build and range to go with, and you don't have, you kind of cut out some of the EQ or the frequencies at the beginning, so you have somewhere to drop and expand to. This one just smacked you in the face, and I was like, whoa. And I went back and listened to it a few times, but it's great. I like it. It was instantly infectious and grabbing.
And gimmicky.
Yeah. Can you actually isolate? I think it's like a pitch bend tom that you do.
Yeah, sure. Like that?
Yeah.
That's played at half speed, so you can kind of pick it apart a little bit better. But yeah, that's the...
Really cool.
Yeah, they're just like slightly different variations kind of throughout.
Uh-huh. That's fun. What's your favorite bit in here?
Oh, man. I don't know. Maybe it's the ending. I don't know. The ending was so fun and uplifting.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh, we have to go back to How Far I'll Go because there's 18 reprises in the movie. So I was like, we have to hit one more at the end.
Yeah. I liked that choice too. It felt like we knew that it was ending then too.
I think my favorite part of the song is probably Shiny. The drums, at least. But obviously Jeff's part is genius, but...
Whoa.
A little out of time right there. That's okay. Like all those little toms, I don't know. They were just so...
Shiny, dazzle like a diamond in the rough. Strut my stuff is so shiny. Say armies, but they'll never be enough. My show's too tough. My women, you can try, but you can't expect a demigod to beat a deck apart. No, you will die. Now it's time for me to take apart your aching heart.
You can hear those fifths really happening right there because they're surrounding the melody and there's that big gaping hole because that's where the melody is.
Uh-huh. And I like the way they're coordinating their slide offs too.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. Super in sync. It's really fun to listen to that vocal percussion line too, and like hear how that added so much in. That's awesome. When other people are creating their arrangement for you, do they beatbox as well?
Not typically. They'll have some kind of drum machine, or maybe like a loop, or maybe a combination of both to kind of lay it out. I think Jeff and I are basically the two main arrangers for the group. So when Jeff does an arrangement for us, that's typically what he'll do. Or if he has something very specific that he wants me to do, he's super good at it. So he'll just lay it down.
That's amazing. That's cool. Yeah. I think that covers most of my big questions that I had. I have like off Moana question, a totally different question that is burning. I want to know, how long did the makeup changes in This Is Halloween take?
Oh my gosh.
I've been wondering that for a long time.
That was a video that took all day. And I definitely saw your review on that, and I heard you ask, and I went, when you were talking about that, I went, oh God. Because I had a flashback back to it, and we just sat, we had 3 makeup artists, and we just sat in those makeup chairs for like hours in between each thing. And it was all very well planned out. That was my arrangement, but Jeff's video, which was fun. He had a great vision for it, and it truly worked out. And everyone loves Fat Ellie, so there's that. As the mayor, he was awesome.
He killed that. Yeah.
But oh my gosh, that makeup! I'm telling you, we started at 7 a.m. and probably finished at like 11 p.m.
Wow. Yeah. That was amazing. And once you kind of go one step further, you can't really go back and do retakes.
You're right. So the shot list was insane for that one. It was like an Excel spreadsheet from hell.
Wow. Yeah. It was a great payoff. Just saying, from our
Absolutely.
end,
we loved it.
This is such a cool. Yeah.
And the little kid is my nephew, by the way.
Thank you. That's perfect. Oh,
he is so cute, but he's already like, children are difficult to work with video because, I don't know, they're here and they're there, and he's getting free candy, and he's just eating. He's on a sugar high, and
yeah, that was a mistake.
And that was tough, but we ultimately got what we needed, and he is awesome. And that little devilish look that he has in his eye,
right,
is real.
So,
but he's awesome. His name's Jude.
Oh, well, thanks, Jude. You definitely rushed that part.
Yeah,
it's cool. Well, I feel like I'm definitely gonna have more things that come up at some point where I'm like, oh, what about that part or that part? But this was such an amazing deep dive into this entire session. Is there anything else about it that you want to mention? No,
thanks for having me, and I can't wait to go see your dive. I really like watching your analysis, not only for us but for other people, and I think it's so refreshing to have somebody who thinks the way that you do and talk about music, because it's really from a musician's perspective, and I love it. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, thanks for making the awesome music that we get to really enjoy.
Yeah. And I'm sure the other guys would probably love to do this at some point too. So
cool. Yeah.
There can always be more.
Yeah. I mean, thank you just so much for giving your time and like being willing to actually have us look inside the session with you. That's it's really open doors. It's so awesome to see. And I'm sure that everybody's just going to love this. So definitely to everybody that is still here with us, please do comment down below if you have other questions, or if you want to know more about various things and tell us more about, especially tell us what you appreciated about this session today. If there was any parts that we highlighted where you were like, wow, I never heard it like that. I'd love to see those comments below as well. And everybody, please say thank you so much to VoicePlay and to Layne for your time. So thank you.
Thanks.
And I will see everybody here soon. And Layne, hopefully we'll have you back someday soon as well.
All right. See you soon.
Bye.